monosaccharide. Table sugar, which we don't really come across anymore too much, is glucose and fructose hooked together like this. This is what we call a glycosidic linkage. Glycosidic means between two sugars. This is also a glycosidic linkage between two glucose molecules. Everybody loves maltose. Right? Jeremy likes maltose. Jeremiah, you like maltose?
Maltose?
Yeah. It's the common sugar that we use to ferment, that yeast ferment to make beer.
I love maltose.
Yeah, to make beer. We use a lot of maltose. Malt, right? Malt extract.
Yeah.
And then lactose. Where do we get lactose? Yeah.
Dairy.
Cow's milk. Cow's milk. That's right. Not breast milk, not goat milk, or whatever. Cow's milk. And that's galactose and glucose together. So interestingly enough, disaccharides. When we get these in our diet, we have to break them down first. Our body can't absorb them. So we'll talk about that in digestion. And then if you hook a bunch of them together, glucose, glucose, glucose stuck end on end, you get polysaccharides. In plants, the most common form is starch, which would be called amylose is the most common form of starch. In an animal, it's similar, except rather than forming this helical structure, it's branched, and it's glycogen. So glycogen and starch are kind of functional equivalents. They're polysaccharides of glucose. Glycogen is an animal form. Starch is a plant form. So I eat starch, I break it down, I absorb the glucose. My cells in my liver then take the glucose, stick it all back together to make glycogen. And I store glycogen in my liver and also in skeletal muscle cells. Sometimes we modify it. If you put some nitrogen in it and rearrange things a little bit, you can get something called chitin and cellulose. Either one of those, actually, we don't have enzymes to break down, so they couldn't serve as nutrients.
That's more for cows, right?
Yeah, so cattle have enzymes. Well, they have bacteria in them that ruminate that can help them digest it. Chitin, interestingly enough, is the exoskeleton of insects. You know, that hard kind of crunchy thing. That's just a modified polysaccharide, which is kind of interesting, but it does have some nitrogen in it to serve as that. So these are our kinds of things. So the ones that we're going to be concerned mostly about are going to be starch and glycogen, because that's what we're going to obtain from our diet. We'll break them down into maltose or whatever, and we'll get that disaccharide. We'll also obtain other disaccharides from our diet. We can get lactose from our diet, sucrose from our diet, maltose from our diet. And then we'll have to break those down to get glucose that we can use as fuel. We don't eat glucose. I bet it's been forever since you've eaten glucose. The ingredient, it wouldn't be called glucose, it'd be called dextrose. So if you ever see on an ingredient just dextrose, that is just glucose. That's just simple sugar. But it's not a very stable thing to use from a preservative point of view for food. So that's why they use sucrose. And now they use as a sweetener fructose, right, in the form of a high fructose syrup, right, like corn syrup or something. They use that. We'll chat about why that's destroying the planet and our pancreas a little bit later. All right,
Wonderful.
is that okay? So you should be able to recognize these. Just so you know, you will want to commit like glucose kind of to memory, its structure. This shows every atom that's on there. It's okay to draw it like this with the carbons gone, because they don't. If they're in the ring, they don't participate in anything. But you will want to kind of commit glucose to memory, because we'll chat about it quite a bit.